That's how it happened.
Yeah!
All right!
Wait, Mormons actually know this story and they still believe Joseph Smith was a prophet?
Well, sure. The story proves it, doesn't it?
No, it proves he did make it all up. Are you blind?
Well, Stan, it's all a matter of faith.
No, it's a matter of logic. If you're going to say things that have been proven wrong, like that the first man and woman lived in Missouri and that Native Americans came from Jerusalem, then you better have something to back it up. All you've got are a bunch of stories about some asswipe who read plates nobody ever saw out of a hat and then couldn't do it again when the translations were hidden.
Hey, Stan, don't denounce our religion.
I don't want to be Mormon, Dad.
Me neither. Hey, that's totally cool, guys. You can believe whatever you want.
Yeah, it's great you have your own beliefs.
Yeah,
Right,
yay for the nurses. Oh, stop it! That's another thing. Why do you have to be so freaking nice all the time? It isn't normal. You just weasel people into your way of thinking by acting like the happiest family in the world and being so nice to everyone that you just blindside dumb people like my dad.
Yeah!
Friends, welcome back. We are joined by an ex-Mormon this time. And, you know, there's a lot of similarities that I think you're going to discover listening to Cynthia's story about the cult that we talk about a lot on this channel and the one I was raised in, Scientology and Mormonism. One of the things that got me out of the cult was studying something called the BITE model, which we've talked a lot about on this channel. And that stands for behavior, information, thought, and emotion. And this is what allowed me to understand that Scientology in particular didn't trick us in a very special way, that the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and a whole litany of other churches were tricking us in the exact same way. And I think you're going to find Cynthia's story fascinating, as she is is it sixth generation in your family?
Yep. Sure is.
Lord have mercy. Oh my gosh. So let's start off there. First of all, thank you for having the courage to come on and speak out about your experience. I know how hard that can be. And would you mind telling us where the sixth generation comes from? Like, how far back does this go in your family?
This goes back when it first started. So when Joseph Smith first made up the religion, which I think is probably not a very nice thing to say if there's any believing members in here, but when he had discovered, if you're going to call it that, back in, I think it was like 1820s, 1830s. That's when my, I think it's like three greats grandpa, Anson Call, joined. So he joined right at the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then did it get passed down through generation after generation after generation, leading up to you? 6 frickin' generations in the DNA?
Yeah, he had 6 wives. And I think some of those kids had several wives too. So there's a lot of people with my last name or with my last name somewhere in their family. And if they have my last name, they are some way related to me.
Wait a minute. One of these generations had 6 wives? You're not talking about Joseph Smith himself.
Anson Call had 6 wives.
No shit. That's not common, is it, in this?
In the Mormon religion, it's very common for the men.
Oh my God. And how is that justified with the 5 other remaining? That's literally part of their religion?
Yeah, it was. I think that got changed. I'm not sure what year that got changed. That was maybe like 1840s or early 1900s, I think, is when the church went, never mind, we don't do this anymore.
Because of the bad PR? Because of what?
So pretty much what happened is the U.S. wasn't a territory of the, or Utah wasn't the territory of the U.S. And the U.S. pretty much showed up and said, we're taking over this state. And I think that was going to be giving them a lot of problems, and with some of because their policies are pretty illegal everywhere else. Mm-hmm. And so they pretty much told the Mormon Church, if you get rid of this, if you stop doing this, you'll still become part of the U.S., but we'll leave you alone.
Wow, that is a fascinating history. So is that something they still practice, Synthea? Like, they definitely do not have 5 or 6 wives, they just have one wife? Or is that still...
They will in the afterlife. The men will have many wives.
That's part of the religion too. So, but what I'm saying is, like, did they actually abide by that? I remember there's that show. What was it on Showtime or something about Mormonism? Do you remember which one I'm talking about?
FDLDS. So when that policy was changed, half of the people went and started a separate Mormon religion, and that's what we would call the FLDS.
Okay.
So they pretty much went, F this, we're going to keep doing this.
So there's two factions basically of Mormonism.
I think there's a third one. I think they changed their name because I was watching something this. So when Joseph Smith died, the Mormon religions, I think, split up in 3 different groups, and one of them was called the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. And I'm not too sure where they're located, but I think they recently changed their name to something more like Christ something.
Hey man, the less you remember, the better. This already sounds crazy. We're what, 8 minutes into it. What okay, I'm going to give people a crash course because I have a lot of questions already on what. Let's pretend that the audience doesn't know anything about Mormonism, Synthea, and just like they say about me and others in Scientology, how can you possibly fall for this shit? Well, remember, we were born into this crap. And I'm going to give you a little sample, a quick breakdown of what it is that she was brought up with. This is a TikTok video, which is hilarious. And then we'll break down in more detail what was inculcated into her mind.
Welcome to the Mormon Church. Have a look around. Here's a painting of white Jesus. Here's your culty wedding gown. If you masturbate, fornicate, drink coffee, or lie, we'll separate you from your family after you die. Welcome to our temple. It's kind of like our church. You do creepy, spooky rituals and buy and wear our merch. Masonic symbols, secret handshakes, baptizing the dead. We used to be racist, now we just gaslight instead. That's right, we're the Mormons. Here's our founder, he was great, even though he married kids and couldn't keep his story straight. But hey, we give aid, we'll help you out if you're poor. Except that in the long run, you'll be giving us more. 10% of everything, down to the dime. Give us 10% of everything, down to the dime. Being gay is a tragedy and coffee is a crime. Having trouble paying rent, just pay us and you'll be fine. 10% of everything, down to the dime.
I told you guys it's pretty damn similar to Scientology, is it not? I mean, so the first question that I can already hear going off in the audience's mind is how on earth can anybody hear that and believe in that? So when you were growing up, how did it go down with your indoctrination with your parents?
Like, this is what's good, this is what's bad. And here's Jesus, he died for our sins. And this is what you need to do to get back into heaven. And these are the things that you want to do. And these are things that are important. So like the getting married in the temple and having kids. Yeah. So because it was stated that you have to be married in the Mormon temple to be in heaven with Jesus. And that's 3 levels of heaven. Mm-hmm. So depending on what you did while you were alive, you would go into one of those 3 heavens. And I guess there is still something that we call hell. They call it outer darkness. And the only people going to outer darkness are the ones that saw the Mormon truth and walked away from it. Went,
of course,
nah, I'm not gonna do that.
How much was this going into your brain, and how much did you take to it? I know any kid is going to believe whatever their
I think I did when I was little, but when I started to get older, I had other experiences that didn't kind of work with that, and it was really pushed in when I was younger that gay was like really bad, and it's a choice, and like try not to be gay. Yeah, I remember being little and being worried if I was gay or not, and I'm like, how would I know if I was gay? And I just kind of figured, I was like, well, I don't really think I'm interested in girls, so I think I'll be okay. And then my thought was sitting there when I think about that, I was like, well, that's not really fair because it's not a choice. Like, I understood it wasn't a choice. It's like, you're not, it's just something that you are. And so I figured, back in 1978, before that, African Americans couldn't hold the priesthood in the Mormon church. And that got changed. So I figure years from now, this will probably be changed too, because they didn't choose their skin color. That's how they were born.
Exactly.
So I think at some point, the LDS Church is going to have to change that policy that they have on
They
the
have been
LGBT.
changing policies though, right? Don't they kind of put on
They
a
made
PR
them.
front that they're okay with the LGBT, but they
Yeah, say we love the sinner, not the sin. We love these people, and then they just have all these extremely hateful policies that
right.
they
That's the
back up.
contradiction. What if somebody was gay? What in the family, and what would be the parents' reaction as to their child not being able to get into heaven now, or what?
I think that no, at one point the Mormon Church just kind of went, okay, well, if you're gay, just don't act on it. Just live a life being alone. Because you don't act on it, you haven't committed a sin. So they
That's
kind of,
so crazy.
and then I think they realized that that was like not really good.
Was it really
So,
working out?
and they were saying for the longest time too that being gay was a choice. And then I think recently they finally admitted, okay, we understand now that that's not a choice. And so I'm not really all too sure what their policy they changed because I've been out of it for a long time. I just kind of pick up from here and there. But I remember when the U.S. made same-sex marriage legal, across the board. Shortly after that, the prophet went, okay, well, if there's a kid in their family under the age of 18 and they can't come to church or get baptized if they want to, if they have gay parents. And they got a lot of backlash for that. So I think it was like a couple years after that, they went, oh, never mind.
I had a revelation on the
God's changed
mountaintop.
his mind. Like, look, they could still come to church and get baptized.
How do
'Cause
they
got
say
a
that,
lot of
Cynthia?
backlash. I don't know how
did
that
they
works.
backtrack on that? Did they come out and say we had some prophet?
Yeah,
Don't
the
you have to
Lord
follow
has
the words of
proved it.
Joseph Smith? Aren't those the
I think they
words?
probably just when we've had a revelation from God,
Of
and
course, right?
they change it.
Do you remember if there was a certain high prophet, not Joseph Smith, but in other words, who would have come out and had the authority to say we will now allow gays into the Mormon
Oh,
church?
whoever's in charge.
And there are in charges and stuff and a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Is Joseph Smith considered the guy though still, or depending on what faction?
No,
you
he's not.
prophet
Well, he's
to?
not alive anymore. So
I know, but are his words like God? Like for example, in Scientology, Hubbard's words are God. David Miscavige, the current cult leader, can never change it. And in other words, his word is God, never to be changed throughout time. How do the Mormons justify? I know they have made changes. Is
they
that
change
another prophet
policies.
that?
Yeah, they make changes all the time, constantly.
And they just justify it by some high prophet in the current
Yeah,
Mormon
like
church
God
has
said,
that
it's okay.
revelation.
It's kind of like it's in God's own time. We don't know the reasons why he does this.
Oh,
And
right.
I remember being at Thanksgiving and they're like, why do you think the prophets in the church and everyone said why African Americans couldn't hold the priesthood before anyone could say anything? And well, because they were racist. That's why that policy was there. And then it was just quiet and they changed the subject.
Wow.
That wasn't from God. That was for man. And the LDS Church has a problem of they'd rather blame God. Oh, it's God's fault. It's not the prophets that are in charge at the time. That was something God's the racist. Kind of they don't want to blame any of their leaders for anything.
Who are like literally above God. And isn't that such an easy out just to blame it on God, or you'll never understand. Yeah. We can't know God's mysterious ways. It's like, talk about the ultimate out. Guys, here's some of the things. I asked Synthea to give me a brief crash course on LDS. So listen to here's the breakdown of it. The purpose of life in the LDS. Okay, the purpose of life, LDS version, to make it back to heaven in which God lives in. How to do this: get baptized in the LDS church, get sealed / married. Can you, as I go through these points, can you explain what that means?
Like getting sealed is the temple marriage, getting the sealing. It's just, I guess, for a time and eternity. So you're together forever in the afterlife.
That's the idea.
Same thing. Yeah, that's what the temple marriage is. What's needed to be in heaven with God.
What's the theory behind that?
Kind of silly. I think Joseph Smith just wanted to have sex with a lot of women.
Yeah, and that's how he
I've seen people make jokes about the LDS Church being a sex cult, and it's just kind of like, it just seems ridiculous when I hear that. But I'm just like, you think when it got started, like everything that happened, yeah, it pretty much was.
I never actually thought of that, but it was formed like the guy Joseph Smith had what, anywhere from 30 to 50 wives, right? It's question.
Yeah, I think
Who knows?
I think they can verify like 30 something. But he did a lot of like secret marriages, so we don't know. There might be some out there that just no record of.
Isn't that interesting, Cynthia, how all cult leaders, it's sort of run by a narcissist or a predator, same
Yeah.
difference. And they always justify their own promiscuity multiple wives and anything that they can act out that's outside of society's norms. It seems like they push that upon their flock, and the prophet can basically do everything that the
Anything he
flock
wants.
cannot, right? Yeah,
I think he
anything
told
anything he wants.
He told his first wife, which was not very happy about this multiple marriage stuff, that if he
I
didn't go
bet.
along with her, like God would smite her for going against God's word. So he put
And
fear into people, being like, if you don't, like, you could say if I could get married to this woman or not, but just know that if you go against God's will, you're going to be utterly destroyed.
And it doesn't work against Joseph Smith himself, right? It only works one
No.
way. How would you explain why she would go along with something like that?
I think probably that fear of that,
Exactly.
believing that
Phobias.
he was.
Yeah.
But when he died, she didn't go with the group with Brigham Young. So she went with the youth. So I think that should probably tell you how she felt about that.
Oh, that was
I
Brigham
think
Young, not Joseph
she,
Smith that we're talking
yeah.
about. And she
Joseph
didn't.
Smith, the first one, yeah. She when Joseph Smith died, she went with I think she took her kids that she had with them and went, and they're the ones that did the reorganized Church of LDS.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, she didn't go along with that main group.
So she kind of still believed in the indoctrination /
Yeah, she did.
principles and did a splinter group, right? That's
Yeah.
like the equivalent of that in Scientology, by the way, Cynthia, are the indie Scientologists, where they still believe in Hubbard and the technology, and then they break off, never seeing that they were conned by a psychopath to begin with. So here is the next one. You guys looking to join up? It already sounds pretty exciting, does it not? But wait, there are things you have to take to be able to have a temple ceiling so that you can be in the third heaven with God. So that's the goal. What is the third heaven with God? And what the let me actually finish it here and get your own planet. See,
Yeah. You get to
that
be
you will be a
God.
god of and populate with your own spiritual children. Talk about a narcissistic, grandiose version of what you too can have in life. I mean, that's not even ruling the planet or anything, Cynthia. That's owning a planet and a whole population in the afterlife.
But I used to be excited when I was little, thinking about, oh, I'd want to have dragons on my planet.
Who the
and I wanna
hell
do
wouldn't?
this. And then I would sit there and think, wait a minute, though. The men are going to have multiple wives, and women are going to be eternally pregnant. I'm not going to have time, a chance to do any of that.
But you have all eternity to work it out on your own
I
planet.
have
That doesn't sound good
eternity
to you?
just to be pregnant.
Wow. How do Mormons deal with that cognitive dissonance?
I don't know. I asked my mom, and she said she was going to be fine with it. So I think,
How
like,
so?
she
What did
thinks
she
that
say?
maybe it will be different in the afterlife. Like, your minds will be suddenly maybe more open. You'll understand everything that's supposed to.
Right. God works in mysterious ways, Cynthia, don't you know?
If you just think about it, and the LDS Church also does not want anyone to reference a heavenly mother. They're like, don't even bring her up. Pretend like she doesn't even
Really?
exist. Because it's kind of like, well, which heavenly mother am I praying to if apparently these guys probably have many, many, many wives?
Mm-hmm. How do they explain the Heavenly Mother figure?
They don't.
Mormonism?
They don't want to talk about it. They
Surely the
want
originator wrote
totally,
something down about it, right?
I think the only thing they brought it, she's there. She's so sacred, we don't talk about her, and that's probably because there's supposed to be many of them for this one guy.
Wow. What's the deal with the third heaven type deal? Is there a first and second heaven for the lesser chosen Mormons?
Yeah. So I don't remember the names of any of this. It's probably very easy to find other YouTube videos from other creators or just to Google it. But I think it's like celestial, terrestrial, and something else. And I think the words are copied something from Masonic. I just totally pronounced that wrong.
Masonic?
Yeah, that, because that video we watched earlier when it was like showing the weird, goofy wedding outfits, and that's from that. And they did they're like, oh, we have weird handshakes, where they kind of went like,
Yeah, the Masonic
And
handshake.
that's another, yeah. So they do a Masonic handshakes. The handshakes are important because when the second coming comes, demons are going to come down and try to trick us, and how we're going to know that they're real angels of the Lord because they'll know these handshakes.
Because they
And so,
literally had the Freemasonic handshake down.
yeah.
That's
So
how
if
to determine
anyone
that.
hasn't got married in the temple, doesn't know these handshakes, don't worry. You could just look up the Freemasonry stuff and you can learn
Exactly. Now,
handshakes
wasn't
there.
Joseph Smith a Freemason, or is it
Oh yeah,
very?
he was before he started the religion. Yeah.
Mhm. One cult.
He was
It's
like one of the
all the same thing.
one of the high leaders of Freemasonry, and I think he just incorporated a lot
Yes,
of
as did
that
Hubbard, by the way. That's a
into
huge
stuff.
model, by the way, Cynthia. The Freemasonic structure to structure a lot of these cults, which hide that background.
Yeah, I know the
Um,
temple ceremony for the for marriage is very much like one of the Freemasonry's
mhm.
ceremonies.
And I get into arguments with Freemasons all the time where they're like, it's just a good old boys club. Yeah, well, if you go down to the local lodge, just like if you go down to the local Scientology church, until you progress up the level, spend 20 years it and get up to their, 33rd degree or whatever, you're not going to be too privy on what's going on. Most Masons don't get beyond the first third degree. And also, was it a big shock when I came out, Cynthia, of Scientology, learning that Hubbard was involved in the occult and all sorts of very interesting facts that just completely were different than who I thought this man was in? Do Mormons trip out when they find out the sordid background of their leader and the fact that it was based on masonry stuff? And was that a trip for you to come to terms with
So
that?
what they did with that is they said, "Oh, the Freemasonry kind of had it right. They didn't have it 100% correct." And Joseph Smith was the one who was able to translate
Right.
that.
And they didn't have the Bible exactly right, too, because Mormonism is basically a ripoff of the Bible, but they
Oh, yeah,
didn't
I've
quite
heard
have the
that.
Bible right either, right?
It's I've heard it as Bible fan fiction, and he also used other books too
Perfect.
that were written before he wrote the Book of Mormon. I'm totally forgetting the name
Bible
right now. The
fan fiction.
View of the Hebrews.
Right.
Because a lot of the stuff the Mormon Church does is they go, "Oh, we had all these policies that which is totally unique," and then finding out now, no, those are all commonly held beliefs by everybody. Any religion had a common belief that the Native Americans were really Jewish people that came over from
Mhm,
Israel.
mhm.
And they also the no tea and no coffee thing was
Yeah.
also a health belief that wasn't healthy for you to drink. So that's why that policy was around and just with, oh, I'm going to make it something that God said, but that's not taught to anybody. So it just seems like it was totally unique. And I've
Right.
heard somebody else say this, that if God was really speaking to Joseph Smith, he would have just went, "Thou shalt boil thy water to have something clean and healthy to drink." Because back
Right.
then, we didn't know that that killed germs, and mostly if you wanted to have something that wasn't gonna make you sick, you would drink alcohol because alcohol killed germs. And I was just thinking, if God was really speaking to him, he would have been like, "Boil the water."
Did he ever get
And
any
then he
kind
would have
of
been way ahead of his time. But
revelations, in a similar vein about why, the restrictions on sex, like you talked about coffee, I believe? What else can't we do here? Let's continue on, with the Mormon life. A temple recommend is what you need to get a temple marriage. A temple marriage is what is needed to be able to get into the third level of heaven, which we talked about. Now, all
yeah.
of these are coming from his divine inspiration. What every guru has a way where they get the all knowledge. How did I'm kind of familiar with this, but if somebody didn't know about it, how would you describe Joseph Smith came to these revelations that make him the
Okay.
prophet?
When he was young, he was going to all these different churches, and he didn't know which one was the true church. And I think somewhere in the Bible says, "Any questions you have, just ask of me." So he goes out into a field and prays, and this great darkness surrounds him, and he feels almost like he wants to give up and, just be like, "Oh, well, that was over." And then like a light came, and Jesus and his father God showed up and said something like, "This is my son Jesus, hear him speak." And I think Joseph asked him, "Which church is the true church?" And he goes, "None of them are. But let's do these things so that you can restart my true religion." And then after that, he would have dreams at night going, "You need to go find these golden plates that are buried here, but got to be worthy first of it." And then when he got the plates, what we were told was that he would look at the plates, and then God would translate in his head and he'd write it down. But you find out now that that's not how that happened. So before he started the Mormon religion, he was a treasure finder. So people would pay him money, and he would do some like I don't forget. It's not like witchcraft, but it would be like some kind of magical ritual, and he would like look into his top hat with a stone and be like, "The treasure's here, and you got to do this ritual. You got to cut, sacrifice a chicken, dig here, say these words." And then when it got close to where the treasure was, he'd be like, "Oh no, the spiritual angel had pulled the treasure away because we did the ritual wrong." And so he always got paid beforehand. So no matter what, like he always got paid, but he never actually found any treasure. And so he was getting in trouble with the law with that. So he's like, I got to do something different. I'm, not making any money. So he cooked up this religion of his. And so when he was actually translating the Book of Mormon, he didn't actually have gold plates in front of me. He put with the same hat in the stone, he'd put it in the hat and read out what he saw. And he had a friend with him that was writing everything down. But we're thinking that he had cards that he had fought out before and put them in the hat so he could see what they were. And the hat's not actually dark. If you have a top hat and you look into it, I watched somebody do this online, and he goes, "Oh, here's the top hat." And he puts his face in it. He goes, "Oh, I can actually see everything quite well." And I think he had like a white top hat.
He was basically a con artist,
Yeah.
You say treasure hunter. So he was basically
He was
just
a
kind of
treasure
a flim
hunter.
flam man turned
Yeah.
prophet. Do you think that he in any way believed in what he was saying? He absolutely
I
knew he
think
was
he
conning
probably
people.
did after a while. He kind of started
Really?
anything I pop in my head is from God, probably went a little. I know
Do,
at one point he declared himself a king of the world,
and
the king
probably
of the
really believed
Mormons.
that.
He ran for president at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
No shit? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. He tried to
Wow.
become president of the US.
So he had to believe in his own bullshit to some degree. Do you know if he was a drug
So
taker? Did he do a lot of drugs? Did he just
no,
kind of
I know that he did drink alcohol even though he kind of banned it. And I know that when he was in the Carthage, I think it's Carthage jail, and because we're always told that he was thrown into jail because of Mormonism, but it was actually because he burned down a printing press, and I think some other things that he done that were quite illegal. And so when he was in there, somebody smuggled a gun to him and like some beer. So like while he's sitting there stressing out, he's drinking alcohol, and they had a gun on him.
that's when he probably came to these revelations that he might have believed in and went sort of crazy and became the
Oh
guru?
no, that was the right before he was martyred.
Okay.
Like I know that he had alcohol in there, and I think he just said that thing because that just is a way to be. I would say be different, but it was a common belief back then that tea and alcohol were very unhealthy for you. So he
They
just
bring in the spirits, right? Wasn't
he
that kind
just
of the
yeah,
belief?
the alcohol tea, yeah. So that it was any hot drink, which is funny because uh they've kind of laxed on the soda, but it also depends on what your parents are like. Because so I was not allowed to drink any soda that had caffeine in it. It was very, very evil. But
Wow.
it depended on your parents, because I had other LDS friends that their parents would let them have the Coke. But they've gone back on that. And they said, okay, you can have that, but just not in excess. But you'll see a lot of them drink like the energy drinks, like, oh, coffee's evil, but I can like drink 5 of these in a day.
Wow. What's the deal with coffee? What was
I just whatever that I think
why
it was
were
just a
people not?
common. Well, he just said it was from God. Like God says that you know, don't drink this. This is the word of wisdom.
Of all the things that God could have translated and communicated in that divine message, coffee came through on his wavelength, eh? That's very
Yeah,
interesting. There,
I
of
think
course,
that
is
was
no
just because
explanation ever
yeah, I think that
given.
was yeah. Well, I think now because we can look back at history, and n- it was because that was a common belief back then. I think
Oh,
just heard it, and like that
knew he could
kind of
sell it.
copying the Bible. He just went, oh, I'm just going to use this because it's out there.
About the Bible, is when people get out of Mormonism, do they go to the Bible in general? Do they dismiss all religion? Or in other
Oh,
words, do they look to the Bible for the truth, recognizing that Joseph Smith did a twisted or unauthorized version of it? Don't a lot of people go back to
I think
original Christianity
some people do.
and some
I
don't?
think most actually become atheists.
Really, that makes a lot of sense.
And the LDS Church likes to go, well, that's because you heard the absolute truth, and if you can't do that, you can't go to any of the other ones. And I was just like, well, no, because they have I didn't bring this up. It's called 13 Articles of Faith. It's something that we're supposed to kind of try to memorize, but about like things that we believe in. And one of them is like, we believe that man should be able to choose however he wants to worship as long as it's with God. And so I always kind of believed that and meant that, all the Christian religions had truth. They just did things differently. I believe that they all, because their practices were so similar in what they believed. So I figured they just all had truth, but we just had the true one. And then finding out Joseph Smith just totally made everything up. Like, it was kind of shattering. I'm just like, well, that if he made that up, they're all fake.
You came to that conclusion after
There's
waking
none
up?
of them are true, because I believe
Wow.
that they were all true, gospels.
Yeah,
of
no, that makes
Christ.
sense.
And I'm like, they're all fake. This is all of this is just a bunch of BS.
I've seen so many Mormons though get caught in that, going back to the original Bible or whatever.
Some people
And
do. They go back and they'll join another church, and they'll say
Mhm.
it's where God is more love than wrath and vengeance.
And it's probably a hell of a lot better than being a Mormon though, because in your standard Christian church, they might not be under the same restrictions and the unbelievably pedantic rules of the Mormon church. I hate calling
Yeah,
it a church because it's clearly a cult. Would you call it a cult, Cynthia?
I would. I call all religions cults. And I
Yeah,
think that upsets some people, but
I
not.
know.
And
I
other
know.
things that can be cults, that they don't have to be religions. Like all MLMs are pretty much
Right.
they're cults.
You can have a gym cult, like,
Political parties.
yeah, amen. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I see it. But there is a distinction though, I think, about, if you're just a standard Christian, for example, you can come and go, and they don't, you can do a church on Sunday. You can love
Or
God and
just
not
go
have
on
all of this
Easter.
bullshit. Yeah. You could be that. When it comes to a destructive cult, which is what we're talking about specifically, like Scientology, and I definitely personally would put Mormonism into that too, and other
Yeah.
ones, it's just maybe we'll go over some of that a little later, but it's that bite model and how they do thought control. They control your behavior. The rules and regulations are so arbitrary and so self-constraining. And then
Mhm.
also you risk losing your family and stuff. If you want to leave, there might be repercussions. Perhaps a Mormon mother or father can't get into heaven themselves if they have a child that doesn't go along with that. Is that any part of it,
Oh,
Cynthia?
they still can. Their kids just won't be
In heaven with them?
together with me. Yeah.
So they'll be what, in the second or first
They'll
tier
be
of heaven?
if they're married and the temple ceiling, then they will be in the third heaven.
And can they still be sealed in the temple with their own marital partner? I guess there's no way to get into is the third heaven the goal, and then everything else is
Yeah,
sort
the
of
goal for
lesser?
everybody. Yeah, yeah.
And how many people can get into that?
Whoever gets the temple marriage,
Is that pretty easy to do?
I would say it's not. I
Do
think
you-
the hardest thing of that would be paying the 10% of your money.
Most Mormons can't do that?
Uh, I would think most of them can't. I think that's a very hard thing to do because they want
Mhm.
10% of your gross income, not your net income,
Wow,
because
that's
you want gross blessings, and they want you to pay the tithing before you pay for your rent or food for your
wow,
family,
insanity.
and you'll receive the blessings later. They don't care, pay us first.
Yep, it's
And I've
exactly
seen
what.
a lot
Yeah,
a lot of YouTubers that talked about how they always paid rent late.
that's so
Always paid rent
insane.
late. Paid the
Are
mortgage late.
are Mormons known to be bad tenants that you wouldn't want to rent out to for that very reason?
I think some of them didn't. I kind of went back for a little bit in my mid-20s, and I didn't pay tithing at all. I'm like, I can't afford to.
Mhm.
I barely have any money after rent and food and bills to. If I give you 10%, I'm probably gonna be evicted. They were
Wow,
just gonna like think that was ridiculous.
talk about phobia indoctrination. That's insane, but I could just see how
Yeah,
many
if
Mormons
you don't
would,
pay your
if they
tithing,
believe
you
in
won't
that. Yeah.
have your family in the afterlife. This is a very important thing to do.
That's so evil to indoctrinate people into something like that, because we're back to, again, what I can relate to in the Scientology experience, splitting up families over a predator getting in there and programming minds to believe ridiculous stuff. I mean, so therefore, do you have to kind of be a rich Mormon in order to get into that third heaven, more or less, to be able to tithe
Uh,
10% of your freaking gross?
I think there's some people that aren't rich. At one
Live below
point,
their means?
yeah, at one point they might just not be super truthful when they go in for their temple recommend meetings. Some of it gets kind of like bishop roulette. Some of the bishops might be kind of understanding, be like, okay, you don't have a lot of money. We're not gonna. I'm just gonna give you a temple recommend. So it depends
Wow,
on that. I don't
I
think some of them
see.
are such sticklers on that, and some of them are.
So there are varying degrees
Yeah.
of sort of orthodoxy, people that follow it to the letter, and then families that are a little more lax, even though they're still
Yeah, they
believers.
think they call those progressive, but I couldn't think of the name of that earlier. It's progressive Mormons and Orthodox, and the progressives are usually the younger
Hence more progressive.
younger gen. Yeah, I think it's
Here's
starting to go. I think once that becomes the higher population, that's probably when they start changing more policies. Is
now regards this temple recommend. Here's what Synthea wrote to me on how to achieve a temple recommend. Keep the Sabbath day holy, keep the word of wisdom, and of course, as she just mentioned, pay 10% into the church. I can't believe that's gross income. That's crazy.
you got to pay your way into heaven, and Mormons will be like, "We don't have to pay money to get into heaven." Well, and then you say, "Well, how do you get into heaven?" You just go back, "Oh, the temple thing." Okay, well, how do you do that? That's
Pay
one of the variables.
10%. So it all circles back around in circular logic. Keep the Sabbath day holy. Go to church. Before and after church, no shopping. No going to a restaurant, movies, amusement parks, parties. Don't even go to work. One can visit family and have a family dinner, read scripture, and give thanks to God. So this is on the Sabbath day. What we'll
Yeah,
be
Sunday.
talking about then? Sunday. Every
That's
Sunday
Sunday.
for the rest of
Yeah,
your
every
freaking
Sunday is
life?
supposed to be like that. I don't know. There's some of them probably don't follow that to the T, but that's supposed to be part of it.
Do a lot of teenagers in particular kind of skip that part? Surely they want to go out to the freaking
Do you?
movies on the weekend and
I think their parents probably
party.
wouldn't let them.
Hey, I wanted to ask you
Probably
this.
you can't go out. I would even try to get my parents one year because Halloween fell on a Sunday.
Mhm.
If I could go over to my friend Melissa's house, who is also Mormon, and just hang out, like hang out with my friend, and my parents are like, "No." I'm like, "All right."
So your parents did follow the Sabbath day rule
Yeah,
pretty
I
freaking
if
strictly.
somebody had a slumber party Sunday night to or Saturday night to Sunday morning, I would be picked up probably at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and I just was there for that one day.
Did
Wasn't
this
like
cause a
the
lot of
slumber
the Mormon
parties.
kids to rebel and over party and
I
overact, take
think
drugs
when
behind the
they
scenes?
probably when they started to become teenagers, I think too, when they felt more freedom, it's kinda a little bit more out of control.
I fricking bet. And also because they feel more guilty, the reverse of that is because it's unnatural. They're automatically gonna wanna have experiences that normal teenagers do. So that must create one hell of a conflict, no pun intended, in the frickin' with the Mormon parents, because that's when you do rebel, right, Cynthia, as a frickin'
Yeah.
teenager? Do the Mormon kids kinda go overboard and go bonkers in some families? Is
I
that a
think
known
some
thing?
of them do. I know that kids at, the BYU college, because it's like what are the policies there? Like, sexual activity unless you're married. And so a lot of them would drive to Nevada, get married, have sex, and then get annulled the next day. And I think the
You're
church caught on to
shitting
that.
me.
No, I'm just totally serious. Caught on to that and said, "Yeah, we're not gonna. That's not a loophole that you can do. Well, the only thing we're gonna do is you actually end up getting pregnant. We're gonna still, recognize that as, a child. We're not gonna get too down on you for that. But yeah, you can't just go to Vegas, get married, and have sex, and then get it annulled the next day and be like, I haven't sinned.
That just shows you how unnatural it is and how desperate these kids are just to experience frickin' sex, which their
No,
body is demanding, and they're being
Nevada
suppressed by
probably
their
made a
frickin'
lot of money
religion.
off that. But I
Damn
think
right they did.
some of them still will still have sex without that. I think some of them just that didn't want to be in trouble with the Lord went, oh, here's a loophole.
Isn't there a thing called soaking or whatever where the guy, and sorry for being crass
I
here,
don't
guys, could put
know
their
how
penis in
true
without
that.
moving it
Yeah, they'll
around and
sit
it's
on the
not
bed, and if it's not moving, and they're not actually enjoying it too much, and it's not actual sex. I don't know if that's just something that was kind of made up. Because the other
Okay.
part of that is you have a friend in the room that jumps on the bed for you. It's kind of like, who's going to invite a third person? That would be a little awkward.
And also that would cause the penis to move, so that would
Yeah, that would be,
immediately
but they're not
discount.
moving themselves, so that doesn't can't be
Oh
like
my
that, you know?
God, this is so funny. You're reminding me so much of my childhood and all the loopholes and things you have to do to still abide by the doctrine. But it's so insane you can't even express teenage desires and angst, you know? Oh my God, it's just such a setup
There's also something I heard
to
of,
breed
it's called
rebellion.
the poop hole loophole.
I
So if it's
don't think I want to hear about that,
that's
but
just
go
if
ahead.
it's not in the vagina, then it's not actual sex, so the poop hole loophole.
I never thought, do a lot of Mormons have anal sex just to get?
No, I think some of them probably do, thinking, "I'm not getting into trouble because it's not that other thing," you know?
Yeah.
But
So is that kind of
probably got
another
turned it
thing?
probably had some meeting that happened in the church saying, "Yeah, that's still a no-no." So I think it comes out later where they're just kinda like, I just don't know that soaking thing, if that's just something that was
A
kinda made up, if that's just folklore, or if that's an actual thing. I mean, it could be, but I don't it just
You don't
becomes
know if
ridiculous
that's a rumor
when
or not?
yeah, because they had and then you have a third person come and jump on the bed, so I'm just kinda like, be like who is gonna invite one of their other friends to jump on a
Exactly, but if it's a legitimate loophole and it's a way to have sex and get the penis to move around,
Yeah,
maybe they
I
would
don't
go
know.
to the
They
extreme of
might,
having the
but it just
third
seems kinda,
person.
like, a little odd to have a third person come in.
Definitely. Now, continuing on with Cynthia's list of how you too can have fun if you just join the Mormon religion. Words of wisdom: do not drink alcohol or coffee or tea that has caffeine. Don't use illegal drugs. This is something I wanted to ask you about. Because of the acting out and the suppression of the sexual identity and everything that goes with it, do a lot of Mormons get into drugs as a way to rebel
But,
and or escape?
prescription drugs,
Are
they
those
feel
allowed?
their prescription drugs are very much okay. They'll just be like
Mhm.
and some of those prescription drugs are much more harsh and addictive,
Damn right.
but it's like, okay, because it's from the doctor, and so some people are just on some pretty bad drugs. It's, probably
I
just as
totally agree
bad as,
with
like,
you.
doing cocaine or crack, but it's
Yeah,
okay, it's prescribed from the doctor, and I
exactly.
know that my parents were kinda freaking out when pot was becoming legal in each state,
So did
and I
mine.
think the Mormon Church was starting to kinda push back on that, and I think I had a conversation with them too that was kinda like, "Well, this has a lot of and it's a lot safer on your body and a lot less addictive."
Yeah.
There's not such a, withdrawal if you're gonna quit smoking pot like other
Mhm.
drugs, I mean,
Are there a
how
lot of
many
pot smokers in Mormonism that will rebel? Cynthia, what got me into Scientology was I thought that when I was smoking pot, I was destroying my brain and I was doing the most evil thing you can do in Scientology. It was definitely a no-no. And I felt so guilty whenever I did it. And that ultimately drove me into the church. Is their stance on drugs pretty hardcore where if you can't even smoke pot? In other words, do they make it apparent that you can't even take a puff if you're a teenager or you're screwed? How extreme
no.
is their?
Yeah, it's very extreme. Even smoking cigarettes is a
Right,
huge no-no,
I bet.
and the only time my parents were okay with somebody smoking, marijuana is with they had cancer and they needed it to,
I
not
see.
feel pain and, eat food.
Again, we're back to the sort of it's government/medical approved at that point. You
Yeah.
can. Wow, okay. You're reminding me of my childhood because I'm not encouraging people to smoke pot or anything. I'm just saying I never had the chance to experiment. I got really repressed sexually because of all the rules and regulations. So I didn't become a whore when I got out, Cynthia. I didn't, but I did go a little overboard in having the experiences that the frickin' cult cut off from me. I was like shaking when I went back to, having my first joint a couple of years out of the cult because those phobias were still in there. And
Yeah.
also, I think a part of that, it really helped the deprogramming process. It depends on what you use it for, maybe, but I used to be a
Yeah.
stoner and got fat and just ate a bunch of food. But then when I was coming out of the cult, just trying to get over that phobia and smoking that joint that one night, I got some more weed from my friend, for the next week. And it was helping me deprogram and go within to undo sort of the programming that Scientology installed. I wonder how much not doing drugs is a part of keeping the mind control, because I bet you kids would start questioning if they weren't so tightly controlled, or maybe if they smoke weed, they're not saying this would happen, but perhaps you would start to question the inanity of the Mormon religion, right? Do you think that's part of
Yeah.
why cult leaders in general, they themselves do massive drugs? I don't know if you said he just was a drinker,
Yeah,
but Hubbard did every
he
drug
did
known to
drink.
man.
Yeah,
Was he an alcoholic?
I don't think Joseph Smith was an alcoholic. I think I've heard stories that his father was an alcoholic,
Mhm.
like pretty heavy. I don't know how true that is.
But he wasn't like a necessarily dropping
No,
every
I think
drug known to
no.
man. Like,
And I think with the schools doing the whole, the DARE program, say no to drugs probably makes it easier to kind of, keep that out of the medical field.
mhm.
I kind of think, because I think, was it Norway or something? They're all legal and drug use is actually way down because people not stigmatized to get help. I could have the country wrong.
Amsterdam, is that what you're thinking of,
Yeah, no, I
perhaps?
think it's like a Swedish, like Norway or something like
Okay,
that.
I
I could be
vaguely know
wrong.
what you're talking about, and you're right. The statistics are down because they don't legalize it. It's almost the theory of as soon as you make something illegal or don't look over there, that's the first thing people are going to do.
Yeah, and I think so that they're starting to do tests on mushrooms too for
Mhm.
I
Microdosing
think probably
purposes too,
depression help. I think that if
and
that
PTSD.
finally becomes legal in all the states, I think the testing for that for medical stuff will probably be I would think that might even be discovered that it's probably a good thing for people that are bipolar maybe.
I
I
was
don't
just
know,
talking
but
about
it's just thinking like
mushrooms with a friend recently.
it's
Yeah.
just if they do the studies with that and they can actually study that, I think that would probably be a safer, less harm on the body kind of medication for somebody to take. And I just think we just gotta progress with that. I think was it
Definitely. I know.
Colorado is the state where both of that pot and mushrooms are legal?
I
No.
didn't know that mushrooms were in Colorado, or is that
Oh,
the
yeah.
case? I know they were
What
cutting
what
edge
about
when
the
it came
state?
to legalizing weed.
Yeah, I think they just recently did that mushrooms are okay.
Wow, good for them, because, I remember doing a mushroom trip when I was, I don't know, again, this is right before I really joined Scientology because drugs were horrible. I should never have
Yeah.
taken shrooms, and I would have had it was an amazing,
You could have had an
I could
amazing
have
career in
learned
the
a
Sea
lot,
Org.
but yeah, exactly. Well, that was used later to get the fuck out of the Sea Org to,
Yeah. Oh, they actually
to
let you I thought they were gonna completely ban you from the Sea Org if you ever did
No,
anything like that.
apparently mushrooms didn't do the trick, but then I eventually had to lie and say I took psych drugs and all that to the
Be
audience, and
be
you
like, "I did
can't
LSD."
join. Yeah, to the audience, you can't join Scientology Sea Org, which is their fraternal order that signs the billion-year contract if you've taken LSD or psychiatric drugs. So that would often be something that people would say to stave off these people because they're constantly hitting
Yeah,
you
I've
up to
seen
join
videos on
staff.
that, how they're pretty relentless on that.
They are. Do they have a team in Mormonism that's relentless on recruiting people and young, eager beavers that are trained like a Sea Org member in
Uh,
Scientology
they
to get recruited?
push and I think the policy just was changed recently, but they would pretty much push that you constantly need to try to get people to convert to Mormonism because this is the way into heaven, and we
Of
gotta try
course.
to give everybody a chance. So it's kinda like, did you have true friendships with people, or was it constantly, "Hey, you should come to church with me?" Probably like people that are in MLMs being like, "Join my team. You
Yep.
can sell things too." Just pretty much relentless in like what relationships were authentic, and I think they recently changed the policy to where it's like just go out and have friends, don't try to pressure anybody into it. And I don't know
Oh,
how
really?
accurate that is because I kind of just I heard that, so possibly that's hearsay. I don't really know, but yeah, I remember being told that. I just like, why don't I just be myself, and if there's a fun church activity, I'll invite a friend, and I'm not going to say anything about joining, but if they see this and that's something they decide that they want to get interested in, I think that's the way to do it. Just don't even be like, "Hey, you should come join us and get baptized." I didn't really like that making trying to get people to do things they wouldn't want to do.
I feel
I
you.
could probably never be a sales rep.
Yep, me
I'm gonna
me
be like, I
neither.
don't want to try to make anybody buy anything.
Exactly. I hated that too, trying to sell Scientology to my friends. I only did it when I don't know. I never liked it, but I was a believer, so I felt like I was saving them and shit too. Thank God I hardly got anybody in, and those that did get in got the fuck out.
I know they
Did you
really
ever
pressure.
proselytize? Did you ever drink the
No,
Kool-Aid
I
enough
had a
where
friend
you
that came over one time and we watched it was like a LDS made movie. I can't really remember what it was.
Oh Lord.
And I was like, it was a good movie too. And I
Really?
watched it, and then he's like, oh, well, I'm interested. I'm like, well, you can come to church with me on Sunday if you want to. And then he did, and I think he almost got baptized, but I think when it got towards the end, he was just like, nah.
Thank God.
And that's the only time I ever got close to anything like that. But I wasn't like pushing him, being like, you should do this. I'd be like,
Right.
check
You,
it out.
you never felt a compulsion because you believed in it to
I didn't
maybe
like
get
it.
people in?
They would
Really?
kind of make me feel bad, and I'm just being like, I'm not going to go out and hand out Book of Mormons to people or be like, you should come join out this church. I
You
just
never
always,
had to do that. That you were able to.
I always felt so uncomfortable when they brought
Yeah,
that up.
I
But I
fucking
think
bet.
they do really highly pressure the young men in the church to go on missions when they turn 18 because
Right.
there's a
You never did the
statement.
mission, right?
No,
You,
that's just for the men. They really want the men to
it's
go.
only
I
the
mean,
men.
women can go too, but women aren't really pressured. The women are just kind of like, you should get married and have kids. And if
Right.
you're going to go on a mission and you find a husband, yeah, we'll cancel your mission plans and you'll just have family and
Wow.
kids.
What is the thing with having multiple kids that Mormon families are infamous for?
Because
What's
you
the
got to
theory
bring
behind
more
that?
spirits onto there's spirits up in heaven that are
course.
waiting to get to here to do this so that they can, have their chance to get back into the third heaven.
Interesting.
Yeah, they really higher pressure men when they're 18, and women are also told that you should marry a return missionary. If that's what you should do.
Because they're the more ethical of the
Yeah, they're
people
the ones
too.
that
They
went on
they
this.
did the journey.
Yeah,
Is that for a year,
2
Cynthia?
years
And
for men.
another
2 years for men and a year and a half for women. I know that they tell men too that if they go on a mission, they're going to be able to have a hot wife when they get back.
Really?
Yeah. So they come
Meaning
back thinking, I'm just going to be able to be like, you're going to marry me, and I deserve this because I went on this
because
mission.
they have the status having gone on the mission, and therefore they can get the most tail when they come back, or the
Yeah.
proper tail, so to speak.
Or the one that the one they think's cute.
Does that work on the women, by the way, when they come back? Are they sort of like the Sea Org of the upper elite
I
of Mormonism?
think what it does though is that the women won't actually look at the personality of the guy, and they'll just be like, "Oh, he has to be good because he's a returned missionary," and they just
Exactly.
end up in like an abusive relationship.
How many people get involved in an abusive relationship that way? Is it
I don't know. It's probably happened to quite a few.
is that something that how do they handle a dynamic in a marriage at the church if there is an abusive relationship?
I
Do they
don't.
have policies on
I
how
think
to fix that? Or
I don't think they really do anything to the men. I think men usually will get away with a lot of stuff, where if a woman does it, they end up getting excommunicated,
so it's definitely more of
or
a
they'll lose
favoring
their
the
temple
males.
recommend. Yeah.
Are women basically looked as the inferior species
Yeah,
in Mormonism?
I know they like to say Mormon women are equal, but they're actually very, very much not so, because they can't hold any power in the church. I think at the 70s, I think they were
Wow.
suddenly allowed to actually give out prayer during church meetings. Before they couldn't really do anything. And I think now they can go into the baptisms of the dead and be a witness for that. Just recently, it's just like they're pretty much their purpose in life is to get married
And make
and have
babies.
kids, and then go back up into heaven and be in
So
heaven with God.
they can still get to the third heaven.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if that comes from the Freemasonic tradition. That's an old
I
boys
don't know,
club.
but Freemasonic at some point started allowing women to join. So
Yeah, I know. That's true.
Freemasonries are even ahead of that Mormon church.
I know. They made that a thing too, but it used to be an all
Yeah,
boys
it's all
club.
men. Yep.
Following on with Cynthia's, would you also like to become a Mormon? So we left off with words of wisdom. You can't drink any alcohol or coffee or tea that has caffeine, and you cannot use illegal drugs. Also, other times that are not the word of wisdom, such as modesty in clothing. We talked just before this interview where if you dare bare your shoulders, that basically makes you the equivalent of
You're
a
pornography.
complete whore in pornography
Yeah,
in Mormonism.
showing too much of your leg and your shoulders, and you're pretty much pornography. And so, if you ever hear ex-Mormon say porn, showing my porn shoulders, that's why.
That's absolute insanity. That's how cults, controlling sexuality is a huge, huge part in destructive cults, by the way. Don't show your shoulders or touch above the knee. No tight or revealing clothing. Women are responsible for impure thoughts that they may give to men with their bodies. So basically, again, they're all whores for anything they do. Only one ear piercing in each ear. That's logical. No tattoos or body piercings. You would make a terrible Mormon.
Yeah.
Don't read books, watch movies, or listen to music that has swearing, nudity, sexual situations in them. So basically, abstain from anything in the environment that we live in.
Yeah.
Rated R movies are pretty much banned. Okay. So just on that alone,
Oh.
did you subscribe to this stuff, or did you?
Some of it. I really liked horror movies. So it was a little harder when I was younger to find something that would be acceptable to rent at, Blockbuster, that my parents would be like, that's okay. And as to the movie stuff, if anybody remembers, there was a company called Clean Flicks that would go through and remove all the swear words and all the nudity.
Oh, really?
That was Mormon run.
That was.
I don't know if you ever heard that, but
shit, I
some
haven't.
people would be like, "Did you watch this movie?" And a Mormon would be like, "Yeah." They're like, "Why? That's rated R." From Clean Flicks. Someone went through and
what would they do? Go through the whole movie and do subtitles or do
they
fake
would probably just
voice overdubs?
take out the sound, or how basic cable would do that when they put a movie on and there was a swear word, they would just change it. The word.
I'm surprised they would be able to even have the copyright to do that and put out movies like that.
I'm not sure, but that company is no longer in business. I don't think enough people were interested in that.
I thought that would be a huge sell to the millions of Mormons, actually. I thought that would be a big hit because surely there would be a bunch
at one point it probably was, but I think at some point they just weren't making enough profit off that, so they shut down.
That's so funny, by the way. I mean, this to outsiders. I don't feel this way, Synthea, because like I said, I know what it's like to kind of just believe what you're told when you're grown up by your parents. But to outsiders and the average teenager, they must be going, it just sounds so repressive. I mean, were you able to watch R-rated movies, or were your parents really keeping an eyeball on you?
If I watched them, I would I'd see that not at the house or at like a friend's house.
Wow. And would you feel guilty by any chance when you'd come back home after seeing that R-rated movie? Would you have to feel compelled to tell your parents?
No, I never told them that. I was very I guess untruthful child.
I had to be the same way, and those bastards still got me, Synthea. I bullshitted them about a lot of things, but I always felt my dad was an OT, so I felt like he could read my mind. So eventually, when they would sit me down when I get in trouble, I would tell them everything, simply because I was terrified that they already knew.
They had a friend parents that gave me coffee ice cream one time. And they're like, and they went, "Oh shit, I wasn't supposed to give that to you. Don't tell your parents." I'm like, "Okay, I won't." But I think my sister went, "Yeah, they gave us coffee ice cream." I was like, "Man, this tastes really good."
Shit, man, it's just freaking
coffee
ice cream.
was really good. And
it sounds amazing. I want to get some right now.
Grocery shopping. Anytime we walk by the coffee aisle, like coffee just smells good. And I just went, "Man, this aisle just smells good."
Oh my god!
And I didn't
Which makes you want to
understand
more.
like why coffee smelled good, but I knew that it was bad. So it's supposed to be like maybe a temptation of Satan. Probably something.
Was
like
that going off in your head that every time you'd be in the coffee aisle, that was Satan tempting you?
It always smelled good when I walked
Fucking
by
it does. Fucking A. So here's some other things you can't do. Don't read books. Okay, so we already covered that. No R-rated movies. Now, these are some must-do things. Charity work, of course. Always inviting people to go to church, of course, with you and join the church. And we talked about that earlier about how perhaps that's lessened a bit. They're not pushing it as much.
Trying to push it as much.
Baptism for the dead. It's a by proxy thing. What does that mean?
So a lot of people would think, I was told that we go dig up bodies and baptize them.
What?
But what it is,
necrophilia?
Some people would like say that, "Oh, that's baptisms for the dead." That just like, that's kind of gross, where you baptizing dead bodies. But we stand in as a child. At the age of 8, you could start to do this. You'd go in there and you'd have white clothing on, and you would stand there, and the person would recite the words for it, and then the name of the person you're baptizing, and then you would just stand by proxy for them. And they would you would do like 20 in a row, and then you'd get out, and then the next kid that was waiting behind you would get in and do the same thing.
Nothing weird or twisted about that. I don't see why you had a problem with that. And then she concluded this message when I asked her to give me a crash course in what LDS is. That's enough punishment for one day. But here's a TikTok video that sums up, and we played that earlier. So you were able to, I wanted to ask you, so you didn't spend too much time in it, and thank God you had a brain and critical thinking that wasn't shut down enough where you didn't either rebel or not have to go along with it somehow. What kind of reaction did that cause with your parents? In other words, are your parents were they orthodox, hardcore believing, and they have
Yeah, they are.
3 rebellious children that aren't going along with this? Or how did that kind of work out in your
Well,
family?
both my sisters, I think they stopped doing that when they turned to 18. I did tell my parents when I was 14 I didn't believe in the religion, and they got really upset and said, "We're going to
I
sit you down
bet.
every night and talk to you about why you don't believe it and try to get you back into it." And I think
Really?
that night when they discussed it with each other, because the Mormon churches, they say this, they're based on free will and let people have free will. And I think my parents came to the conclusion that we have to give her free will, because they never sat me down every night and did that. But since I was under the age of 18, I still had to go to church with them. So I pretty much just
Wow.
went through the motions on that. And then right when I turned 18, I stopped going. I'm like, okay, now you can't make me.
Were you breaking your parents' heart, and did you
Well,
feel
I'm sure that's why
guilty for
I
breaking
didn't
their
really
heart?
feel too guilty about that. No, I
Good
think
for you, because
they were
that's
quite upset
I
about that. And
bet.
then I think both my sisters stopped going too. I think my parents used to also try to bribe my younger sisters with things that they
Wow.
wanted. I'll do this for you if you go to church. And I think they would do those things to get what they wanted. But I think when I was bribed with it, I was just like, yeah, it's not worth it.
Wow. Were you the first one to kind of break away in your family amongst the kids?
Yeah,
Did you inspire your sisters to follow you?
maybe I probably made it easier for them to when
Yeah.
they said I don't want to do this no more. The brunt shock of it was probably for me. It probably still hurt them as just as much.
Your parents are still able to get to are your folks on the way to the 3rd heaven still? Did you
Yeah.
screw that up for them in any
No,
way?
no, that doesn't affect them in the afterlife. And I think I didn't mention this to you
Mhm.
because I kind of spaced on it, but the purposes of doing baptisms of the dead was, even if you don't get to hear the Mormon religion in this life, when you die, your baptisms will allow you to hear it and then choose if you want to go in on that. So it's kind of like,
Wow.
even if you don't make it in this life, you have the afterlife. So that's pretty much the purpose of baptisms for the
Can you
dead, is to
explain
to
so they
give
can
the have the chance to hear God's true word and be able to get the chance to go to the third heaven. So you can still just do it in the afterlife. It's just going to take a
wow.
lot longer than if you
Wow,
did it
can you
on Earth.
still own your planet and work yourself
Yeah,
up to the
you can
3rd
get
level?
yourself up to date. It probably would take millions of years.
Wow, holy shit. So obviously they believe in reincarnation, a version of how
Into
do they look
heaven.
at that? Is
I
there
think
just sort of heaven and this world? How many
yeah,
times
there's
have we
the
lived in
heavens in
this
this
world?
world. No, it's just the one life, but if you can't
Okay.
do it in this one life, the baptism of your baptism of the dead will be done for you. And then when you're in the afterlife, since that's been done, you then have the chance to hear the word of God and then work on your way up to getting into that third heaven. It's just going to take
Wow.
way, way, way longer than if you did it on Earth.
Do they give a doctrine of what will be required if you have
Oh
to go
no, we
that
don't have
route?
no idea. No, we have.
It's just
I
all a
don't
mystery.
know. It's just gonna probably. I don't know. Be same with the sum. I don't really know what that would be like
Wow.
in the
And what's
afterlife.
and what's the justification or explanation for why each person that succeeds gets to own their own planet?
I think that was just the reward system.
Like that's what they
Mm,
basically get in the afterlife for conforming to the here and
yeah, I
now.
think maybe Joseph Smith wanted to prop everybody up. You can be your own god when you die.
Right. That's exactly what
Maybe.
that sounds like. Did Joseph claim to have owned other planets in past lives of his? What
Oh,
was his
so we didn't.
history?
There were pre-existence is we are all spirit children of
Mhm.
God and whoever the Heavenly Mother is,
Which isn't
and
explained really, right?
pretty much they think they called the planet Kola, but I think they started not talking about that when I was born.
Because
There
it
was
has
also
such bad
had
PR?
to well, yeah, I think so. I think if you search it, you might be able to find a cartoon video of it somewhere on YouTube.
I've seen it.
But
I think
there's
South
a
Park, uh,
uh,
incorporates the
they
planet
might have.
Kolob. Yeah.
I know that at one point, I think Joseph Smith, or I don't know if it's Joseph Smith or Bringy, but they used to say that the moon was Kolob, and the spirit people that were on there were like giants. They were like giant people on the moon that were. But I think I think they probably stopped doing that because it's kind of like, well, I think we can pretty much disprove that.
Yeah, and we have telescopes of enough magnitude where we're not seeing the frickin' giants. But, any religion will just
Yeah,
change it and say,
so
"Well,
there
they're on the
was
dark side of the moon. You can't see them."
yeah, so there was the pre-existence, and we were all spirit children
Mhm.
under the Heavenly Father and Mother. And I think we came to him and said one day, like, "We want to be like you. How did you do this?" And he said, "Well, you're going to have to have a physical body. And you're going to have to go
I see.
through, tests and trials, and it's going to be miserable. Not all of you are going to make it back to us, back to here." And I think Satan said, "Well, why don't we have a planet where everybody comes back? We'll just make everybody come back." And it displeased the Lord and Savior. I'm just adding silly words now. It's not really how it's said. Displeased
But
him
that
that
the
he
I but the
displeased him.
idea
He's
is
like,
right.
didn't like that. And a third of the heaven went, "We like Satan's plan." And God cast them all out of heaven to where they were never going to have the chance to have a physical body. And the
Oh, and
rest
then is
of
that what you call hell? Is that would be their
that's
version of
where kind
hell?
of
In the void
yeah,
forever?
where all the demons are. So a third
Right.
of his children became demons, and that's what tempts us to try to get us to do
I see.
bad stuff, and they greatly dislike us because they don't have physical bodies and they would like to have one. So they get great pleasure in making us sin.
Right. That would be the demons of Christianity that's a very kind of similar story to my
Yeah, so you think
understanding.
about that. All those demons were our brothers and sisters in heaven.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just because wow. Wow.
The other half of the everyone that said yes to Jesus' plan is all the spirits that you see here on earth. So hey, look, you were a spirit in heaven
Interesting.
that chose the correct way to do it.
That's really interesting. I mean, that sounds, crazy, but I could actually understand, especially if you're raised with that. That could absolutely make sense and be terrifying. And
Yeah.
also, you're one up just by being here and incarnating,
And
or
I always felt that that was kind of really
wow,
unfair to do to Satan because he just wanted everybody to get back. Let's make sure everybody gets back. So I had this feeling that when
right,
everything was said
right.
and done here, that he would also be forgiven.
It almost
Forget
makes
it. It
God
kind of
sound like
seems
the
like
asshole and the more satanic of the
yeah,
characters,
it
doesn't
kind of
it?
seems more like Satan was trying to come for a more loving spot. Like,
That's
hey,
what it
let's make sure
sounds like.
everybody can get back. You know.
Did anybody question that, what you just said,
No,
in the
I've never
Mormon
said
church?
that out loud to really
Because that
anybody
makes a lot of
before
sense what
because
you just
that
said.
kind of just I think a lot of people because they're so indoctrinated in like God and
Right. They
Satan, they
would
probably
take
just be like,
offensive to what you
"Which?"
just said. No, but that's a very logical,
When you think
critical
about
thinking
that,
question to ask. He does sound like the
did
more
he not
forgiving.
understand the totality of that? Like that's not really fair just to be like he wanted. Oh, you don't like that? Cast you out. You're all
Yeah, and
demons
you don't
now.
get to have a body, and you'll did they say that those casted out would also have a chance to quote unquote repent?
No, they said
It's
never. They
they're
never get to
screwed
have a
forever.
body. But if people can
And
get
wow,
baptized for the dead and have the chance to hear the message afterwards, I would think at some point maybe
those spirits would hear
I
it
should be
too.
able to give them a chance to be forgiven.
What a sick,
But
twisted
that's just me. I
philosophy.
was just kind of like that's kind of messed up.
I know. All they did was simply go against God one day and seeming a little more expansive, loving. And he's like, "That's it. You're screwed. You're going to become demons for the rest, and you can
It's
never
kind of, but
incarnate in bodies."
it's kind of like the Mormon religion is running on Satan's plan right now. Though they want to take away free will choice. No, no, you got to do this. You chose to be baptized at 8 years old, so you gave away pretty much your free will for everything. You have just moral agency now. You have to do this. And I think if young men,
Wow.
when they turn 18, they say, "I want to go on a mission," and they say, "No, you have to. You agreed to this when you were 8 years old. When you got baptized, you pretty much agreed to it."
Even though they didn't know what they were really agreeing
Oh,
to at
they're
8
not.
years old.
That's not said to you when you're 8. You're going to have to go
Really?
on a
They actually
mission.
don't tell you that? They don't
No,
tell
it's
you
not.
that
I think
before your
they're just.
baptism?
I think it's being said now because I think a lot of more young people are choosing not to go on missions now, and I think
Oh,
the church
wow.
is losing more members, like
Mhm.
in massive amounts. Like their membership
Really?
is actually going down of like active members.
Do you think the internet has played a role in that? Like the internet was
I think the
Scientology's
internet.
Achilles heel. Do you think
Well, I
that's what's
think because they were able to get access to information,
exactly.
was what did them in, and it's pretty much why it clicked in my head when I was like, "Oh, this is a whole bunch of bullshit," because I was told that this was the ultimate truth, and find out, and you hear this stuff that well, that's just all lies, and then have the church come out now and be like, "Well, actually, those anti-Mormon lies are actually anti-Mormon truths."
Wow. When did that kind of start to happen, Cynthia? And when did
I think
you,
around 2017, 2018
and you
is like
already
when
obviously stopped believing well before that, right? But
I
are you
think I still
saying,
believe in like some of it,
Mhm,
but what happened was because I started, I think I saw that one of the Scientology's movie, and I don't know if it was Getting Clear or I
Sure.
honestly don't remember the name
Mhm.
of it. And I saw that, and I'm like, well, I'm like, that's a really messed up religion. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should start watching this Scientology The Aftermath series.
Mhm.
Because a movie that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours can't possibly
Right.
capture everything. It's like you got to do like a general, like, bite size of information, try to get all of
Exactly.
that in there. And I started watching that, and I was just like, oh, totally shocking. And then I started going onto YouTube and watching stuff on YouTube about, to get more information because TV shows still, they can't get everything. They got to like edit
Mhm.
a lot of stuff
Mhm.
out. And then I came across this video. I think it was Chris Shelton doing a video with totally spacing on Jonathan Streeter, and I think his channel is called Thoughts on Things and Stuff. And they were doing it was Mormonism versus Scientology. And I'm like, oh, this should be interesting. I should watch this and see like,
Still
what
not knowing
if
really how.
possible. Yeah, and a lot of the things that Mormons were doing was the same things that Scientology was doing. And I was going that that's really messed up. And then I started to kind of look into the stuff that he said, well, this is actually the true history of the church. And I was just like, I'm not going to just take your word for it. So I kind of looked it up, and some of the church websites that were from the church were like, okay, yeah, that's true on there.
Wow, they actually
But
came
they
clean
kind
on
of
some of
try
it.
to do like a carnal of truth. I
Right.
think they were forced into it. And I was like, that just solid. I was like, yeah, that's all bullshit. All of it.
Did that split your mind like, a lot of us when we wake up out of our cult
It was a little bit of a trauma
yeah.
for me. It was very sad because in the Mormon church, if you love your spouse or your friend and you're not married to them in the temple, you don't get to see them in the afterlife.
That's so sad
And
if
I
you
had a
believe in
friend
that.
that was dying of cancer, and I was just like, I don't want to lose this friend. I don't want to not see him in the afterlife. And I was getting myself prepared to where like, okay, I'll just, you know, try to maybe get married to him and then do the proxy later because he didn't have much longer left. I think when he was diagnosed with cancer, they gave him like 30 days, but I think he made it like 3 months.
Oh, man.
And I wanted to do that, but I think like he just wasn't into, like he didn't really. I don't think he wanted to, for the reasons if he feels like that's kind of like, you know, kind of takes away my life, my what I can do in the future if I do that. But
Oh,
I
man,
was
I feel bad.
I was gonna totally like do whatever I needed to do to get a temple recommend so I could do the proxy temple sealing. And then I remember when I found that out, it was like kind of like soul crushing, and then a little bit of relief because it means, oh, all that meant nothing,
Yeah.
and this probably saved me from not that happening for me, like just flushing my money away with the church, and
None the wiser too, without that
you
information
know,
available online, right? You probably would have
yeah,
never found out. And to me, that's really important, Cynthia, because like until we find out the truth about our leader or the lies that are spun, I feel like we're always I felt always susceptible to being pulled back in. Because as long as I still believed in it or harbored
I'm
or
part
any
of
of
it.
it and I
Yeah, it's
couldn't
kind of
see
like
through all the lies, it's like that programming can always be re-triggered by the cult or your family members to pull you
yeah.
back in. Happened
I
to
was
me.
kind of felt like I needed to get myself to go back to church at some point because when I die, I'm not going to be in a
Right.
good spot to be able to get back into
Exactly. You might not
one
have
of the
totally
better
believed in it,
heavens.
right? But you're at least gonna follow some of it, right? But
Yeah,
did it feel like a huge relief when you don't have
it
to
was.
follow any of that fucking thing
I
and you
used to
knew it
have
was bullshit?
I used to have end of the world dreams a lot where like stones were falling from the sky and it's like, oh shit, I didn't do anything. I ran out of time.
Oh God.
And those dreams stopped. And I'm like, oh, that's nice.
Those were all the phobias that were installed that were showing up in
Yeah.
your dreams, right? Through the cult.
Yeah, it's like I
Isn't
had
it?
to get myself good enough so that I can like finish the rest of this, whatever I need to do when I die. I'm not in a good spot right now
And you don't
to be able to
believe in
get
that
into heaven.
anymore.
No, I don't.
at all. There's no
Mm-mm.
residuals. Good fucking for you. How long did that process take to go from initially seeing going clear to where you're at now?
I think it was like
Be able to get rid of all
maybe
that?
like about a year, and when I found out that the Mormon Church was not true. I think for me, since I wasn't fully invested in it, it
Mhm.
was only a couple of months of me just feeling like blah. But I know
Yeah.
people that are really into it. If you find their YouTube channel, they'll talk about it too. Like it's devastating, really. And they have support groups out there. I think
A lot of good support groups.
one of them said how you can tell a group is a bad group to be in is do they have a support group when you leave?
That's a great fucking point. And there is a lot of support for ex-Mormons, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
people are
there's a
looking,
lot of
they can
those.
land. And you mentioned also too that more people are leaving than ever before.
Yeah.
Again, the internet, of course, but is there anything else that's driven? Like, I wanted to ask you, what was their original membership at their peak? And if you had to guess, where would it be now, just to show how much it has changed, hopefully.
Oh man. So
Do you have any idea?
I just remember hearing the status of like millions, and I don't know how accurate it is because I know that they
Mhm.
count a member up until the age of 110.
Oh, wow.
So, if your grandpa, they're still being counted as a member, and they count anyone that's just baptized. I don't think they do the numbers of actual active members, but I think they're kind of lying on how many they have because each year it goes up by like a million. So I think it was like 16 million last year, and this year they're saying 17 million. But
That's what
when you start
Scientology
to
does.
look at the stats of like how many people are going on missions, like the young people, those numbers are like dropping like every year. And I think
Excellent to hear.
they take roll at people that go to church, and those numbers are going like down by 20%. Like those numbers are
Wow.
dropping. Like
Same things happen in the Scientology cult. I wonder if that's happening with all the different cults simply because of the information that's
I
available.
think,
That's
yeah,
really good to hear.
Christianity all around the world is starting to see less people in.
Yeah, all religions.
It's not just like a Mormon or Scientology. It's like
Yeah, I know.
all
I've
of
noticed
them.
that.
Yeah.
Do you think
And
people are becoming disabused of a spiritual or religious life, or
I
they're
think
simply waking up because of information?
the access to information too, and I think the ideas, the modern ideas too of like, hey, gay people are there's nothing wrong with gay people, and like why are we
Right.
discriminating? I think like the changing view on that. Like I
Yeah.
know before that was the minority of people would think that, but
Right.
now it's more the majority. So I think
Right.
that's kind of probably I think that's one of the reasons why now the LDS Church is losing members because of their policies on that.
Yeah,
But
particularly because I know they're brutal on those policies. We had them in
yeah,
Scientology too, but that's a major thing that my understanding is Mormonism pushes that people are not down with just because of how unaccepting they are of that community.
yeah, my dad said he would leave the Mormon Church if they suddenly said gay people are okay and can get go to the temple. And I'm
He
like,
said he would
okay, well
leave.
I'm all get ready. It's coming at some point.
They're going to
That's not
have
a
to in order to adjust
that's
to
not
their PR. Yeah,
it's
to
not a
keep
question of if, it's a question of when that's gonna
when.
happen.
Yeah.
And I think once the
Wow.
leader of the church is chosen, that's somebody that's a little bit younger, maybe somebody that's like in their they're maybe in their 50s now that's in the, part of the group. It's like Quorum of the 70 and Quorum of the 12. It's the titles they give, people, and then you have the prophet. So when somebody who has more of an ideal of progressiveness in the Mormon Church gets to that, that's when it's gonna probably change. Unless the government or people looking at them and kinda shaming them into it will
Mhm.
get them to change.
Or if they lose enough members because of that too, they might
Yeah.
change their ways. That's one thing I got to give the Mormon credit, the, the Mormon Church credit for. Scientology, you have to beat them over the head to get them to change anything, and it's always just changed for PR purposes, but they don't really change a damn thing. I think they lessened up on a little bit of the abuses out at Gold Base because it was exposed so much. They stopped, I think, imprisoning people, but we can never know for sure. But the
Yeah.
Mormon Church does seem to be willing, if there's enough pressure, they lose enough members, or they perhaps have their tax exempt status. They do seem like they have some willing wiggle room to change. Whereas in Scientology, we live and die by those policies that the dead L. Ron Hubbard wrote. They can never
Yeah.
change. Are willing to change their ways a little bit? Do you ever think a
Yeah,
Mormon
they've changed a lot
church
of
could could become not a destructive cult and actually turn into a quote unquote legitimate religion or something that's not
Yeah,
harming people and separating
I think it
people.
would be great if they did informed consent,
Right.
letting you know, like, don't keep not keeping things hidden,
Exactly.
letting you know what you're about to get yourself into, um,
But then
changing
they wouldn't
changing
be able to manipulate
discriminatory.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you probably still would have something, but it would just kinda not be something that would mess you up later, finding out. I've watched, if you watch some of the videos of the people talking about going through the temple ceremony, because you don't know what's gonna
Hmm.
happen till you're in there, and the only
Oh,
people that can be
wow.
in there are ones that already went through it. So they're
Hmm.
sitting there going and they're doing all this chanting, and they're sitting, "Okay, we really are a cult, okay, but we're the true cult of Christ." And I've
Really?
heard a lot of them, like, do that and be like, they had no idea what's coming to them because
And
there's,
also, they're not told that they're going to have to go on the mission either, you said, right? Once they
yeah,
become
I
baptized.
think that's a new thing because a lot of them aren't volunteering now. I think
Hmm.
now they're kind of being like, "No, you gotta do it. You agreed to this when you turned 8." It's like a what do you call that? Hail Mary, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. The last ditch
Like,
effort. That's why I
we're
call,
losing ones that wanna go on a mission. Let's tell them that they have to.
and just like the Masons, it sounds like it's structured like a secret society where you're not told up front, you're not given informed consent. You're going to
Yeah.
learn as you go what you signed on the dotted contract a long time ago. If they could just be open, right, Cynthia? But I don't think that their function was to do anything other than capture minds and to control people and to make a lot of fucking money. So if
Yeah,
you were to
that's
remove
the
the
main part of it.
manipulative policies, what would you be left with?
Yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
I don't know what.
It would be
Yeah,
nice if it was maybe just the basics, like,
yeah,
the whole, family and,
yeah.
charity work, let's be helpful and help other people kinda thing.
And
I
what do
think
they have they pretend to do that though too, like the
oh, yeah,
Scientology church, they have outreach programs and they
they
probably
have, like,
help.
food banks and
Mhm.
stuff, and they tell the members, "This is separate from your tithing, that you should give money to this food." I forget what
Oh,
it's called, but it's
wow.
like a food program to help feed
Mhm.
families, and I remember them telling me, "Even if if you spend $5 on your meal, still give more than that because, these other, we need to supply more food for this thing." And I was thinking, no, if I'm going to donate to that, you're getting $5 because if I don't have barely enough food to feed myself, why
Yeah.
should I be throwing like $100 at you? Like that just seems to make my situation worse.
Are there a lot of, Mormons that get booted out of their apartments, lose their jobs, and go into financial ruin
Oh,
by being a part of this group?
I don't know if anyone's been evicted. I don't know if I've heard stories about that. It's possible that they just paid late a whole bunch, you know, and paid whatever the late fees are for that, and
Mhm.
then maybe then ended up getting a job where they can actually afford to pay rent on time, but I've seen some of them say that when they quit going to church, that was great the first time that they didn't have a late fee on
Yeah.
rent.
I bet, especially
Like,
if
I
you've been
paid it
doc.
yeah, I don't remember how much the apartments charge for that. I don't know if that's like what, 75 or $100 for paying late or more?
Yeah, it's not good, and especially if you don't have the money to begin with, and then you have to tithe. Is there wiggle room with the clergy on that, where if you're about, or do they just like 10% of everything, and if you fricking withhold from us, you're going to hell? In other words, you have to be honest with them, right?
Yeah, they want you to be honest. Don't you pay an honest tithing.
And they trust the people. They don't have any kind of ethics program to search out your finances and
I don't know if they search it out. I think you just get called into a meeting each year to get like, I guess, to settle. I don't know what it's called, but I think
settle
it's
the debt.
to settle the tithing for that year.
Wow. So they
And if you
definitely
haven't paid a full tithing, they'll ask you to pay a check for that.
really.
Yeah.
Wow. It's just like the Scientology registrars. It's like, here's a, check for $1,000
But
in
it's
order to
not
get
kind
to
of only
God this month.
I think the only time they try to do a shakedown. But you can always be like, nope, that's a full tithe. I remember one year when I got called into that meeting, I was a teenager and I was like, oh shit, I don't think I paid any tithing this year. I'm like, I'm going to be in so much trouble with my parents. I go down and sit down and bishop goes, $20. He goes, is that full tithing? I'm like, yes. Cause I probably made more than, $200 that year,
Mhm.
but was given $200. It's like anything you come, like presents,
Oh, Jesus.
get
Even
money that's
gifts?
gifted to you. Yeah. Any money, even that money is gifted to you, they want you to, and I just like, I don't remember giving him $20. Maybe my parents just did that for me. I honestly don't remember doing it. And I was like, oh, thank God, I'm not going to get in trouble. Because I assumed that if I didn't give any money, he was going to tell my parents. But
And you're a freaking kid. What kind of money were you making? You're working at
I
what,
think I was
McDonald's or
like,
something, making
I
$5
think I
an
was like
hour?
13 or 14 or
It's
something.
ridiculous. You had to pay tithings too. Children have to freaking pay their
Yeah, they have
tithing of their
get your
allowance.
kids. I guess get your kids doing it young. Yeah,
If you can get the
we would
young
go out
minds early, you got them for
collecting
life.
cans, and we would go cash those. And my mom would be like, "Do you want to give 50 cents to for your tithing?" And I think I said no
Come
one time, and she was
on.
very happy. I was like, "I want that 50 cents."
You're freaking trying to make money off cans, and the Mormon Church even has to take that from a
It's kind of like
13-year-old for
well,
fuck's sake.
I think I might have been 10 years old or 12.
Oh my God.
I
Like
was
you
like,
said, get
"No,
them
I don't
young.
want it. I want to keep that 50 cents." But that
Get
kind
them
of thing, if you,
young by bring them
yeah.
young. Yep. Oh my gosh. I'm just so happy that I mean, Cynthia, do most people eventually break away that grow up in it, or is it
Some people
are,
stay. I see some of
for the rest of their lives?
some of my friends, same age, and my cousins that are like still heavily into it. And I want to make comments, be like, you know what you're getting yourself into, right? But I'm
Right.
just like, it's not going to go anywhere. I even had
Yeah.
one of my cousins like make a note to me saying like, "What happened to you? You must have been hurt really bad." I'm like, "Yeah, I was fucking lied to."
But they
That
don't know
church is
that. They think you're the
untruthful. I think that
yeah.
they're still so indoctrinated. It's just kind of like, oh, they're told that they're usually told the reasons why people leave. Someone hurt their feelings during one of the meetings.
That's the
Someone was
excuse
mean
they
to
give if
them.
someone wakes up.
Yeah. They wanted to sin. And
Right.
I'm like, just
Right.
like, that's not the main reasons why people leave.
Are there certain main reasons that cause people to leave
Yeah,
specifically?
it's the policies. I think Mormon stories with I don't know why I'm forgetting his name right now. John
I know what you're
something.
talking about.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's good because it'll probably come to me later. He did a video on this years ago, and I think when he was still kind of in, and he was having issues with the true history of the church, he was doing the reasons why people leave, and he did reasons why the Mormon church think people leave, and he did it. I was like, yeah, that is really accurate. So it's kind of like the hiding of the history of the church.
Mm.
It's very difficult because you're not told that the church just wants to do faith promoting stories, and a lot of these stories that they make are they're made up. They're not true.
And more people are finding out about that because of the internet, and that's what's causing the
So
exodus.
finding out like the actual history of like what Joseph Smith did, what Brigham Young did, it's kind of like, okay, well that just means this is like, somebody would, if this was any other religion and you weren't Mormon, you heard that another religion was doing this, you'd be like, oh, it's a bunch of BS. Obviously that's not true. And so it's a little bit harder when it's your religion, but for me,
Right.
I couldn't deny it. I was like, yeah, it's fake. All of that's fake. All of it.
But what a huge fucking relief, because you don't have, you know what I say, Cynthia?
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade being a non-Scientologist for anything, because as brutal as it was, I went through massive PTSD forever because I was very indoctrinated, but I never have to take another course. I never have to write another check to Scientology. I don't have to do a damn thing hammer my parents ever say again. And that freedom is worth fucking everything. I can only imagine the freedom that Mormons have coming out, especially if they grow up in it and they're indoctrinated into it, what it must feel like. As hard as it is, as brutal as it is to read about their leader and his past and the lies that were told to you guys, what an amazing freedom too. The ex-Mormons seem so happy. I mean, I've watched,
you'll watch them
they
talk
just seem
about
like
that.
really, I do. And they have a really strong ex community, which I'm learning about and I really like. And they're just good people that grew up like I did, believe in, it gets passed down generation after generation. Our parents aren't bad. They're just simply passing on what they were indoctrinated to believe in. Because I don't think any parent would purposely want to, if they really knew what they were doing to their kids, stunting their development and suppressing their natural urges. I don't think any parent wants to do that. They just have the power of God and the indoctrination held over them. So it's great to see like you and this generation breaking that intergenerational trauma and lies and bullshit. I mean, I know you didn't, you sound like you were already kind of a critical thinker and rebellion and you didn't get stuck in, but if you didn't have that, you could easily bring your kids into this world and teach them the same damn thing. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to say,
I had a friend that wanted to get
congrats.
married to me, and he's a hardcore Mormon. I was just
Mhm.
like, I don't think you're gonna want to do that. Well, because this is what I think of Joseph Smith, and how's that gonna go? Hey, kids, don't listen to your dad. He's full of shit.
Oh, wow.
But I guess there's some people that do work the mixed faith marriage. But I was just like, you're not gonna want to, because I have a feeling at some point I would probably, just destroy, with like the logical stories that are out there, the true history. It's kind of like it's really hard, and I know some people, the members, they struggle with that for years, and the Mormon Church
Mhm.
just goes, put that on a shelf. You'll figure that out later. Don't worry about figuring that out now. And so they have the statement that's called their shelf broke, because they put too many things on it, and it just
I
became
see.
too much for them to like try not to think about, and just
I can
ignore it.
s
It's like the fake it till you make it kind of thing. And it was just too
Right.
much. At one point, it just broke, and they're just like, this is all a whole bunch of bullshit.
That's one of their sayings actually in Mormon. If
Yeah,
you're
because the
conflicted,
church
just
was
put it on the
telling
shelf.
them to put it on a shelf and worry about it later.
Right.
Just pray about it. God will help you figure that out later. And it just wasn't ever figured out. It was just more things being added to the shelf.
That's such a great analogy. That's exactly what happened to me. There was too many inconsistencies that I had to put on the shelf, not think about. That's just your reactive mind speaking, Doug, that eventually it's too much and
That's
you can't
Satan
deny it
lying
anymore
you.
and it crashing down.
To the
Yeah, it
shelf.
was Satan for you guys. It was the reactive mind that was speaking to us.
It was doubt your doubts. Like,
Exactly.
that's just Satan going after you. Well, okay, well, now I'm just confused. How am I supposed to know when the Lord's speaking?
Don't
When
you know
I'm
the Lord
feeling
works in
something is
mysterious ways,
bad.
Cynthia? You'll never be able to understand it. It's beyond our ability, and that can keep the trap going on
Yeah, feeling anger
indefinitely.
is also a feeling from Satan. So anger is never a
Really?
good feeling to have in the Mormon church, which is ridiculous because sometimes anger is very much
Ye
needed.
Absolutely. So they have a form of, we're back, my friends, to what we talked about at the very beginning as we start to wrap up here about the fight model. And that's every cult controls behavior, information, thought, and emotion.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. You know what we called it in Scientology, Cynthia? We weren't allowed to have human emotion and reaction.
Yeah.
And I know there was a way that it was presented where that was logical to us, but just like in your cult, you can't express. Everything gets limited emotionally. And as soon as you
Especially
do that, your world gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And then when you get out, all these emotions can come back. And then to feel angry, I was fucking so angry for so long, but it felt great. I hardly ever cried before. I cried for years. All the things that this fucking cult wouldn't allow me to feel came rushing back, and it was overwhelming. And if Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, if our parents weren't involved in that and we were allowed to develop naturally,
yeah.
all these emotions are completely normal and they shouldn't be beaten out of us,
Yeah,
That
more
was
trial and error with things.
exactly.
And,
That's taken away.
probably a safer area. And
Exactly.
smaller doses kind of thing. Oh,
Did you have any kind of an emotional reaction when you kind of came to terms with
yeah.
finding out that your leader was bullshit and stuff? Did you
Yeah,
cry, get angry?
I didn't think I cried too much. I think I felt like a mild depression because I'm just like,
Mhm.
oh wow, so my whole life has been based on a lie.
Yeah. Yeah. Believe me, I understand that. You weren't, I don't know if Cynthia is Marcus's girlfriend who we had on a couple weeks ago, and Marcus is an ex-Scientologist. That's to the audience. Do you guys have that commonality? Does it help you? First of all, do you need to really heal?
I think
Does it help you and Marcus? Does it help Marcus to bounce off to see
I
the
think
similarities?
I think it does because I have somewhat of an idea of kind of what he came out of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also how I found him was because of watching the Scientology YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm.
He likes to thank Aaron Levin or Smith Levin, I forget.
Brought you guys together.
But I would say that no, you don't give him credit. Give Leah Renemy credit because she
How
was
so?
the one
Was
that
that
got me.
the
Because she was the one that got me to look for the stuff on YouTube. I was like, this is interesting. I want to keep learning more about it.
Do you think you were being pulled to it because it mirrored unconsciously your Mormon experience that you were
I
trying
think
to
so.
suss?
Yeah, it was just really interesting and some of the YouTube channels I like to watch that I find very interesting are the ones that do like deep dives on the history, what the church says and what the actual history of that was. And I think that's the Mormon Discussions. They have
Mhm.
some very smart people
Yeah.
on there. I think one of them's a lawyer, and so he has that. And then one guy calls himself the backyard professor. He's very smart with everything. And I don't remember the other guy he was a ex bishop. He used to be bishop. He probably does other things too because he's also very smart. But they just go into detail on like even like Bible stuff. They went back and did a deep dive on that, like how the meaning of words change, and it was just very very interesting. It's almost kind of like a history lesson. So I really enjoyed that. But I also enjoy the other channels that kind of they'll do funnier things. Usually those videos are shorter.
This is an incredible community that I'm just learning about, like I said, trying to get up to speed on this interview. Isn't it amazing, Cynthia, how Mormons capture intelligent people? You just mentioned
Yeah.
there's really intelligent people in there. How would you explain to people how a scientist or somebody that quote unquote should know better, how anybody, especially intelligent people, seem to actually be captured by these? How would you explain that?
I don't know. I think it's probably wanting to be in community, being in some
Mhm.
place that
Human
feels
needs
probably
lacking.
safe. Yeah, kind of maybe a direction to go.
Mhm.
I know that the LDS Church does really want their boys and girls to go to college, and they
Oh,
think,
they do.
yeah,
They
they
do
do.
encourage
But they
that?
tell
That's
you
good.
don't listen to feminists. Don't listen to I forget, uh, like not like a theologist, but like a somebody that
Anthropologist?
no, 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 it's just with, like, knowledge, like, somebody that's very like, astute and, like, knows, like, probably all knows about all the history stuff, like, don't listen to
Mhm.
these people that will probably help you to become, like, creative, free thinker. I don't know, that's a
Wow.
problem with their college right now because they have some of the college professors that are like, "Yeah, we're not cool with you." We wanted the kids to think for themselves. That's kinda what college is for and not be like, "No, don't look at that, don't think about that. That's not, the true way of that." I know a lot of, college professors have lost their jobs because they started kinda doing that. Yeah, it's like, yeah, don't listen to feminists or, like I would just wanna say smart people, like real smart people. I am
I
totally spacing on what that word is right now.
I know what you're talking about, though. I'm
Yeah,
spacing on it too, but I have the word, like, floating
word is
around.
just gone.
So it really doesn't have to do with intelligence. In fact, I've noticed that a lot of these cults do kind of go after, intelligent
They
people,
get you
people that
with
care. They're gonna be the ones that are gonna invest the most in, and also, somebody pointed out perhaps it's human
do
needs. We all have human needs, so
they
needing.
do, love bombing, and I know
Yeah,
they tell
exactly.
missionaries that when you're going out and, they call it tracting, that just means going out and knocking on your door.
Mhm.
If you find somebody that just lost a loved one, tell them, "Hey, you lost your loved one, but if you wanna see in the afterlife, you guys can be sealed together." So it's like,
Right,
go
what a
after somebody
sell.
in an emotional state.
Exactly,
Be like,
exactly.
"Hey, there's hope in the afterlife. You just need to do this.
That's the
Come join
perfect
us."
time to get somebody too, right when so many people join a cult when they're at a
Oh, yeah.
vulnerable
Or if
point,
their
and
life has suddenly become very messed up, "Come, we'll help you get back on your feet and get you
they
back on
will, they love
straight and
bomb you, you're
narrow."
in an
Yeah.
environment, you feel like you found your best fucking friends, and if you haven't experienced it before, an abusive relationship where you get love bombed, it can feel absolutely amazing. I think I told was talking to somebody, Scientology, a lot of people can get into cults because they don't either come from an abusive family, they grow up with a narcissistic parent or whatever. I felt like Scientology became my real family and my second home. I could tell them
Yeah.
what I couldn't tell my family. Yet I never would have been pushed into that if my parents themselves didn't go through their own trauma, couldn't see their own blind spots, and thrust that onto the kids, i.e., me and my sister. By the way, I've healed enough where I actually feel really bad for my parents, but I wanted to kill him for the longest time. How could you? Why, God? Why did this happen? But, my parents just are passing on what they know. They're not bad people. They themselves were
Yeah.
traumatized. And it takes a strong person like you to look within rather than just projecting all your shit onto other people, and especially your kids. Is there anything that you wanted to say, as we've been talking for about an hour and 40 minutes? I don't want to take up your entire night. Is there anything that you wanted to say
See.
or that we might have missed? I think we got a nice coverage on your story. And really, I learned a lot just from this message that you sent over and hearing you break down Mormonism, I feel like I actually understand a lot more about it. And again, just how similar it is, Synthea, to what I grew up in. They really all do follow the same pattern of a predator, and the way that they indoctrinate is not special or unique.
I think maybe just mentioning the same things that Joseph Smith did that is similar to Hubbard.
Mm-hmm. Please.
And so Joseph Smith was very good at making up stories when he was young. Very
Really?
good. He would make up stories in front of his siblings and his parents. And when he went and wrote the Book of Mormon, he went up to Canada to try to sell the copyright of it. That did not work out. He also incorporated something that he was a part of, the Freemasonry, into a lot of the rituals of the Mormon Church. And I think L. Ron Hubbard went and he actually sold the copyright to one of his books. He incorporated the Navy stuff into how he wanted that religion set up. And I think I'm missing something on Hubbard that was the same. I think Hubbard's also a very good story writer.
Oh yeah, that's what he was obviously known for. But just like you're describing, he had this imagination like Joseph Smith.
Yeah. So some of the things that are like very, very similar. And I don't know if Hubbard was grooming girls. I think he was like picking, cute girls out just maybe to like do like office work around him. Maybe I think I kind of caught on to that a little bit. I don't know if he was doing anything sexual with them, but I think he was making sure that he had like cute. I think it was blonde. I think he seemed like he preferred blondes too.
That's right. And there's no evidence that has ever been brought forward really that he was sexually abusing those kids, but let's just say I wouldn't be surprised based on his others.
Could have been just to have some eye candy around him, possibly.
Yeah, definitely. And just the feeling of power, about having these young kids around that he can control makes him look awesome. It's just amazing, Synthea, how there's almost like a model for these people that go on to form cults. They have an imagination. Like, they're both writers. They're
maybe
almost like a blueprint.
Like he was a reincarnation of Joseph Smith, maybe.
Hey, Hubbard claimed he was a reincarnation of Buddha.
Yeah, I think he's more likely Joseph Smith.
Satan incarnate. They very well could be the same things. And also the timeline doesn't fit, but Trump looks a hell of a lot like Hubbard and has the same fucked up mouth and the same narcissism and shit.
Yeah, I think
maybe it's all just one being and maybe it's just one asshole that keeps reincarnating. And
I think if reincarnation is a true thing, it's more likely that he was reincarnation of Joseph Smith and not Buddha.
Exactly. And that's the perfect place to end it, where we, put Hubbard and these cult leaders in their place. And again, friends, it's all about information. Thank God for the internet and for, because when I was growing up, I couldn't find out any of this shit. There's so many people. This is why it's important to speak out too, and why I really appreciate you coming on, and why this ex-Mormon community is so important is that the more people that speak out and the more information that's, especially with the internet now. When I was growing up, I couldn't access anything, but nowadays all someone has to do is just simply type in the information and bam, they can be out of an abusive relationship and cult immediately. So thanks for speaking out. Seriously, that takes a lot of courage, and hopefully your story will encourage more people to reach out and come forward. And friends, you're always welcome to come on and tell your story, just like Synthea did.
Yeah, and I should give you a list of all the YouTube channels that I.
You already did. You gave me
there might be. I
wrote them all down. The list that you gave me.
Yeah, because those are
taking notes.
Great channels to go to. Some of the stuff is serious, and then some of them do like silly little satire.
To our listeners, please give me, if you don't mind, Synthea, provide the links to those. I'll put them out before this video goes out tomorrow. And guys, check if you're interested in learning what she's talking about. I've been learning this myself. There are some fantastic channels which she turned me on to. John?
It's John DeLinda's Mormon Stories. I couldn't remember his last name.
Okay. All the links to the videos of Cynthia's choices for the best Exmo channels will be in the description. And again, my friend, I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.